The Last Mistake. Lynn's Corporate Revenge. Part 1. The Fall of a Titan. Lynn Parker sat in her corner office on the 42nd floor of the Apex Solutions Tower, the Chicago skyline stretching endlessly outside her window. 63, silver-haired but sharp as ever, she had served Apex for nearly 3 decades. Her resume read like a who's who of corporate triumphs, successful mergers, turnaround strategies, and acquisitions that had transformed Apex into a billion-dollar juggernaut. She had built her reputation not on charisma or charm, but on an uncanny ability to see 10 moves ahead. Her colleagues called her the chess master behind closed doors. She wore dark, tailored suits that spoke of timeless authority, and her piercing blue eyes had a way of freezing a boardroom into silence. While some played politics, Lynn played outcomes. Her instincts were legendary, and her loyalty to Apex unshakable. Yet behind her poised professionalism was a woman who had faced battles far fiercer than boardroom wars. She had fought to raise 2 children after her husband, Richard, passed from cancer when their youngest was in high school. She had climbed through the male-dominated world of corporate America in the 1980s and 90s, never once compromising her values to get ahead. Her victories were hard-won, not gifted. Her mornings always began at 5 a.m. with black coffee and a long walk by Lake Michigan. Her mind never stopped strategizing, an internal engine that evaluated, recalibrated, and executed with precision. She wasn't just smart, she was seasoned, tested, empered. She had thought she'd finish her career here. She had thought wrong. A sudden ping on her computer brought her out of her thoughts. It was a meeting request. HR, 2 p.m. No details. A chill ran down her spine. At 2 p.m. sharp, Lynn entered the sterile, glass-walled conference room. Inside sat Martin Greer, the company's head of HR, and Rachel Kerr, her protege turned rising executive. Rachel was barely in her 30s, young, bright, and ambitious. Lynn had mentored her, groomed her, trusted her. "Lynn, please sit," Martin said, not meeting her eyes. Rachel smiled, but it was tight, mechanical. "This isn't easy, but due to restructuring, the board has decided to terminate your position effective immediately." Lynn blinked. "Excuse me? I've led the strategy division for 15 years. I created that division." Rachel folded her hands. "It's not performance-related. It's just time to move forward." Lynn stared. She wasn't angry yet. She was calculating. She was already dissecting the motive beneath the words, tracing the lineage of betrayal that had clearly been festering. "You're making a mistake," she said evenly. Martin pushed a stack of papers toward her. "The severance is generous. NDA included." That was the moment Lynn knew. This wasn't about budget cuts. It was a coup. And she wasn't going to let it stand. Part 2. The burn runs deep. Lynn packed her things in silence, but her mind raced. She recalled subtle shifts over the past months. Rachel requesting more access, asking to lead presentations, downplaying Lynn's role in strategic meetings. There were signs. She had just ignored them as she placed a small glass paperweight, a gift from her late husband, into her box. She felt a tightening in her chest, not sadness. Focus. She left the building that day not with a box of things, but with a list of names. Her first stop, Jeffrey Tran, a mid-level analyst. She had once pulled out of obscurity. Smart kid, loyal. He reminded her of herself in her 20s, sharp-eyed, quick-witted, and underestimated. "Jeffrey, I need a favor." Quietly. Over coffee, Jeffrey shared that Rachel had been quietly briefing the board on repackaged strategy plans. Plans Lynn had written. Rachel had presented them as her own and been rewarded. Jeffrey leaned in, and there's more. "She's pushing hard for a merger with Novatech, but the numbers don't add up. It feels off." That night Lynn dug deep. She found inconsistencies in Novatech's filings, whispers of inflated assets and offshore accounts, a house of cards. And Rachel was pushing Apex into it. She opened a secure drive on her laptop, one she hadn't touched in years. It held confidential project files, proprietary data she had authored, and a personal archive of Apex's transformation under her leadership. She smiled darkly. That was her way back in. Not through forgiveness. Through fire. Part 3. The Ghost in the System. Lynn set up shop in her condo study. 3 monitors. VPN tunnels. Old contacts from the cybersecurity world. She wasn't breaking in, she was breaking through. Her condo was a reflection of herself, tasteful, organized, and intentional. Her walls were lined with books on corporate warfare, strategy, and ethics. On her desk sat a framed photo of her late husband, Richard, a lawyer who had died a decade earlier. He used to say she was more strategic than any judge he'd ever met. There were remnants of her past scattered subtly through the room. Plaques for leadership. A framed Wall Street Journal article from 2009 quoting her during a market rebound, and a leather-bound journal in which she scribbled predictions and observations late at night. She registered a shell consultancy, Eldon Strategy Group, just another boutique advisory firm, but with a mission. Using her vast network, she contacted Peter Russo, an investigative journalist with a nose for financial fraud. Hypothetically, she said, if a major consultancy was walking into a fraudulent merger, Peter perked up. Next, she started seeding doubt in Apex's internal forums, posing as a junior analyst from Eldon. She released innocuous but pointed questions about Novatech's metrics. It didn't take long before employees began whispering. Then, Lynn reached out to Apex's biggest client, Grandan International, anonymously, tipping them off. If Grandan pulled out, it would shake Apex to the core. The cracks were beginning to show. Part 4, laying the traps. The days that followed were consumed with planning. Lynn wasn't rushing. She understood that true revenge wasn't swift. It was precise. She spent hours refining her voice as Eldon, making sure every email sounded like a different person, young, enthusiastic, slightly naive, but with just enough industry jargon to pass as credible. She built a fictional team with LinkedIn profiles, modest resumes, and fabricated credentials. Each profile was tied to real schools and companies, carefully curated to avoid suspicion. Lynn wasn't just playing a role, she was building a believable reality. She knew Apex's ego would be its downfall. Lynn sent Rachel a message through Eldon, an invitation to a private strategic seminar hosted at a luxury hotel downtown. Rachel, curious and flattered, attended. Lynn watched from a private camera as Rachel boasted to a room of supposed execs. Actually actors Lynn hired, about her vision for Apex Novatech. She handed out documents, revealed timelines. It was all recorded. The younger woman was easy to read. She was ambitious, but inexperienced. She craved recognition more than she valued caution. That made her predictable and dangerous. Lynn baited Rachel further, offering Eldon's advisory services for post-merger integration. Rachel took the bait, hiring Eldon as a consultant. Through this, Lynn gained access to more confidential data. She worked late into the night, tracing emails, examining metadata, cross-checking transactions. She uncovered bribes, hidden assets, manipulated reports, evidence of a deal designed to implode, one that would take Apex down with it, and she collected it all. But the deeper she dug, the more Lynn realized that Rachel wasn't acting alone. Board members were involved. Greer had approved bonuses tied to a timeline of the merger. The CFO had quietly moved his shares offshore. The corruption ran through the company like cancer. Lynn tightened her plan. She would not only destroy Rachel, she would burn down the whole rotten structure. Part 5. Public face, private war. Apex went public with the Novatech merger. Stocks soared. Rachel was on magazine covers. She had one, or so it seemed. Lynn, through Peter Russo, leaked documents to the SEC. Simultaneously, a whistleblower report compiled by Lynn arrived on the desk of every regulatory body that mattered. Then she contacted Grandan International again, this time with proof of Apex's manipulation. Grandan withdrew. Other clients followed. Confidence in Apex shattered overnight. Rachel's press tour turned into crisis management. She stuttered through interviews, dodged questions on financials, and grew visibly thinner with each public appearance. Inside Apex, panic set in. Board members scrambled. Greer resigned quietly. The CFO took a leave of absence. Lynn watched the downfall from her condo with quiet satisfaction, sipping her morning coffee. But she wasn't done. She began contacting former Apex employees, people over 50, who had been forced out or marginalized. She compiled testimonials, NDA leaks, and patterns of discrimination. The media ate it up. Then came the headlines. Ageism, fraud, and collapse. Inside, Apex Solutions meltdown. Rachel was summoned to testify before a Senate subcommittee. Cameras captured her struggle to defend herself. Lynn's evidence had become a national scandal, and yet she remained anonymous till the day she chose to reveal herself. Part 6. When the House Burns. The SEC raided Apex's offices. Rachel was indicted on charges of securities fraud and conspiracy. Other executives were forced to resign. Martin Greer, the HR head, was exposed for helping cover up illegal bonuses. Employees were laid off. Investors revolted. Lawsuits stacked up. At the next shareholder meeting, now live-streamed amid public pressure, Lynn walked in. Gasps filled the room. She was poised in a black suit, eyes calm, expression unreadable. She approached the microphone. I was fired under false pretenses. Today, you know why? She dropped a folder on the table. Here's your truth. Now make a choice. The room was silent. Part 7. The Reckoning. The board begged her to return, offered her the CEO position, offered her everything. She declined. I don't need a title to win. I already have. Instead, she walked out with a final payout, a settlement worth millions, a public apology, and a written statement absolving her of all wrong. She gave a final interview to Peter Russo. They thought 63 meant finished. I was just getting started. The clip went viral. Part 8. Queen Without a Crown. Lynn founded a new firm, Phoenix Circle, dedicated to protecting and empowering older professionals wronged by the system. She was invited to speak at conferences, wrote a best-selling book, and became a voice for age and gender equity in corporate spaces. Rachel Kerr received 5 years in federal prison. Apex was acquired and broken up. Lynn didn't return to the tower. She didn't need to. She had burned it down and built something better. The queen had no crown, but she ruled nonetheless. If you enjoyed this video, please subscribe, like, and ring the bell to be notified of future videos. Thanks for watching.